what's your plan in this paper, Taming the Warfare State, your outline here to rein in the fiscal crisis from the Department of Defense?
I think the first thing that people need to understand is that if you're going to change anything, you have to have a new national military strategy. And most of you will remember that back during Donald Trump's first term, they created this allegedly new national military strategy, which was really neither new nor particularly rational. It simply said, we regard Russia and China as enemies. We regard Iran as a rogue state. In other words, it was a rehash of what had been going on all through the 90s and in the early part of the century. And the national military strategy then focused everyone in military planning on interventions and operations, both clandestine as well as open, to deal with these alleged existential threats. What you got out of that was, as usual, more military spending. You know, we never run out of threats to identify. I mean, the nation has never been without threats since we were founded. But we are more secure today, and not as much as we were, but we were certainly, when Mr. Trump became president, and during most of his 4 years, more secure then than at probably any time in our American history. Mm-hmm. But people didn't want to see it that way. So we created these fictional threats because there were foreign interests as well as domestic interests that wanted to involve us overseas. Mm-hmm. And this overseas empire is kind of a self-licking ice cream cone. Okay. You know, it's a place where everybody wants ice cream, so you go abroad to get your ice cream, and then you don't ever want to run out, so you send more ice cream. Yeah. So what are we talking about? First and foremost, we're talking about a military strategy that is designed to avoid war. Mm-hmm. All you ever hear about is, well, we're deterring. Well, that presumes there's somebody out there who's anxious to push the button and go to war. Yeah. That's not really true. So you set up a system of defense as well as commerce and economic development that is designed to cooperate with, not fight the rest of the world. Yeah.
So you're talking about diplomacy and peaceful cooperation.
Yes, of course. Always. That should be first and foremost. And we've got to get out of this global military hegemony system, which is really what we've been building. Yeah. And we have all of these regional unified commands. How many do we really need? And people say, well, you know, we have the Indo-Pacific Command. We've never had any interest in the Indian Ocean. What are we doing with the Indo-Pacific? It's just this continuous expansion of interest and capability. Yeah. And just because you have the capability to do something doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. Mm-hmm. So we need to reduce those regional unified commands. The other thing is communications. 100 years ago, it was very difficult to communicate around the world. Today, it's lightning fast. So you don't need all the intermediate levels of command, all the additional command structures to manage your own defense. Yeah. Yeah. And it puts the American military in a very, very difficult position. You have all these 4-stars, some 44. And these 4-stars that are in charge of regional unified commands, functional commands, so forth, they all are looking for business. Yeah. Think of them as CEOs with a corporate structure, and they're actually looking for business. So they're constantly looking, well, we need to be involved in the Philippines over here. See this, and we need to be prepared for what happens in Taiwan. And, oh, well, there's Malaysia and Indonesia.
They're looking for monsters to destroy.
Exactly.
They read John Quincy Adams, and they did the opposite.
It's a constant search, a reason to be there.
They're looking for Loch Ness if they can find it. Whatever.
Exactly, and that's true all over the world. It doesn't make any difference where you go, and it's just wrong. And so we can change all of that, and we're not putting ourselves at risk.
This paper, Taming the Warfare State, that kind of sets out your vision for reform. You're talking about a $1 trillion annual foreign policy.
Annual budget right now.
Right, okay. And so what would you administer in terms of cuts? How would you cut that down?
Well, there are several things that you need to do. First of all, you need to come to terms with the reality that you don't need all these commands. At the same time, you don't need 44 4-stars. We have a force of 1.18 million men under arms, or men and women now. Mm-hmm. If you look at that and you compare it to the Second World War, at the height of the Second World War, we had 7 4-stars. We had 4 in the Army Air Corps, and then we had 3 in the Navy. We didn't have any Marine 4-stars. Mm-hmm. We seem to have done reasonably well since we had 12.2 million men under arms. Now people say, well, wait a minute, Dow. Some of these generals were 5-stars and so forth. Well, yeah, as the war was winding down at the end in the last 6 months, people were promoted and given honorifics. Mm-hmm. That means an honorary promotion to something. Okay. We didn't have this vast military bureaucracy that justified 4-stars everywhere. work.
So let's recap. So far, we've talked about this fiscal crisis and how we can leverage this as an opportunity to cut
Mhm.
waste. You, in there,
Well, I'd say streamline,
streamline.
simplify.
Yeah. Well, that saves you in this paper, what, 400, 500 billion a
Yeah,
year?
especially as you move on
So
to
that's
this.
half.
Yeah.
That's one half for those
Yeah.
and Rush Limbaugh would say in Rio Linda, where they have to do
Yeah.
for those of you in Rio Linda, that's half the budget. He's saying you could just streamline the Defense Department and you can cut half of the budget waste. Just seeing how enthusiastic people's hunger for real paradigm shifts in government with this incoming administration, seeing what I was able to see with Elon's enthusiasm, Elon Musk coming out enthusiastically in support of some of the things that are similar to this, like auditing the Pentagon and, cutting out foreign aid and all these big paradigm shift things that he seems to be bringing to the table. Elon Musk, if you're watching, I think you should read this document, Taming the Warfare State. I'm saying that from my perspective as someone who is new to this, but as someone who is passionate about the same things that I hear Elon say. I'm going to put this on, if you don't mind, I'm going to put this and tag this on my website. I'm going to put this on my X, Elon, and I think you should take a look at this because I think this is a whole new paradigm that you're mentioning here.